Alzheimer's is coming. Summits aim to educate caregivers for adults with Down syndrome. You're listening to The Wrap from Central Florida Public Media. I'm Brendan Byrne. Adults with Down syndrome are very likely to develop Alzheimer's disease as they age into their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And this week, the Alzheimer's Association held summits in Florida for caregivers and service providers focused on diagnosis and quality of care. Marie Kalb's 49-year-old daughter Gretchen has Down syndrome and has developed Alzheimer's. Kalb says young parents whose kids have the genetic condition need to know about the brain disease.
They should be working with Alzheimer's the way I am because, for a cure, because this is their child's future.
That's ahead on The Wrap, the big stories this week from Central Florida Public Media. But first, these headlines. President Trump's immigration czar was in Sarasota this week. Tom Homan was joined by Governor Ron DeSantis at New College to discuss changes in immigration policy in Florida and nationwide. Homan said the number of people entering the country at the U.S.-Mexico border is down significantly since Trump took office in January.
A secure border saves lives, and that's what President Trump has done. We were saving lives by the thousands simply because we have a secure border.
DeSantis called for Congress to take Trump's executive actions and make them permanent.
We've got to get this into law, and I think Congress really needs to be way more aggressive than what they've been so far.
DeSantis also called for increasing the number of people enforcing immigration laws and for state and local law enforcement to supplement those efforts. A bill that would expand health services for children and families in Florida with complex medical conditions is making its way through the state legislature. Central Florida Public Media's health reporter Joe Mario Pedersen reports the bill would direct state health leaders to amend its home and community health services to include disabled children who receive private duty nursing services.
A health subcommittee reviewed the bill favorably, with 14 voting yes and 3 voting no. The bill would expand home health services, also known as the Medicaid model waiver, so that it can serve all Medicaid-eligible children who receive skilled nursing services. Vanessa Oliver is a Republican member of the State House of Representatives and the sponsor of the bill.
We're all pulling in the same direction for this group of kids, and at the same time trying to really streamline government operations and cut down on waste.
Children's Medical Services, or CMS, is a health insurance organization for low-income families who have medically complex kids. The bill would also transfer CMS operations from the Department of Health to the Agency for Healthcare Administration, which oversees Florida's 3 other children's health insurance programs. Joe Mario Pedersen, Central Florida Public Media.
A controversial bill proposal that would undo Orange County's new rural boundary cleared its first Senate committee hearing this week. As Central Florida Public Media's environment reporter Molly Durg finds, critics of the bill say the legislation would hurt communities by restricting local government control over development.
Supporters of the bill say it's intended to ensure development regulations are applied more consistently across the state. But groups like 1,000 Friends of Florida and the Florida League of Cities stand opposed, saying the bill would severely undermine local growth control. The Florida Senate's Committee on Community Affairs advanced the bill, with 5 committee members voting yes and 3 voting no.
Central Florida Public Media's Molly Durg reporting. NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Sonny Williams have returned to Earth after being stuck in space for more than 9 months. Their SpaceX capsule parachuted into the Gulf of Mexico early Tuesday evening, just hours after departing the International Space Station.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
The splashdown brought their space saga to an end. It all began with a bungled Boeing test flight last year. The two expected to be gone a week or so after launching on Boeing's new Starliner capsule from Cape Canaveral. So many problems cropped up that NASA ordered Starliner back empty and reassigned Williams and Wilmore to SpaceX for the ride home. These stories and more on our website. Visit cfpublic.org. It's time for the Winter Park Sidewalk Art Festival this weekend, and it's expected to draw a crowd.
It has been estimated that we get somewhere around 250,000 people that come through Winter Park during those 3 days, the Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. So parking is available somewhere.
Hear more about the festival. That's on Spotlight. Get it wherever you get this podcast. As more people with Down syndrome age into their 40s, 50s, and 60s, the vast majority, more than 90% of them, will develop Alzheimer's disease. As Central Florida Public Media's Joe Burns reports, families facing that grim prospect are also worried about changes in federal funding.
Me and you, buddies, buds. Silly girl.
That's Gretchen Kalb, who has Down syndrome, and her mother, who comes from Ocala on weekends to visit Gretchen at a care home in Tampa. Gretchen, who turns 50 in June, has been living with Alzheimer's disease for many years. Before that, she was a cheerful, playful girl and young woman. She learned to read at a first-grade level, rode her horse Pokey, swam in the Special Olympics, and worked part-time at Publix. Gretchen fell head over heels for Tyler, a teenage character in the sitcom Life Goes On, that also featured an actor with Down syndrome. And she still has a crush on him today.
Oh, Mommy. Oh, Mommy, what?
Tyler.
Tyler, I know. You're always thinking about him, aren't you?
And Gretchen's mother, 73-year-old Marie Kalb, is now, as always, completely devoted to her. She says the Alzheimer's diagnosis came after big changes in Gretchen's behavior. Her giggly personality became aggressive for a time. Gretchen, who went through multiple group homes, lost so many of her hard-won skills. Now she loses her train of thought from one sentence to the next and picks up and handles imaginary objects with her fingers.
It's tough with the special needs, of parents to deal with that their whole life.
Yeah.
But this is even tougher.
The life expectancy for someone born with Down syndrome has improved tremendously, thanks to advances in medicine and access to care. But as those individuals age, they are far more likely than the general public to develop Alzheimer's disease, and it comes on earlier, too. This week, the Alzheimer's Association is bringing together experts, caregivers, and service providers at 3 summits in Florida. At issue, the diagnosis and care of people with Down syndrome and other intellectual and developmental disabilities who may have dementia. Katie Fahrenbrook with the Alzheimer's Association says the signs are different for someone with Down syndrome and are often changes in skills and behavior from their baseline, and they're not self-reported.
So it's heavily reliant on the people that are supporting that person with IDD to recognize that, hey, something here is changing, and we need to dig in to see what that is.
The summit comes amid new challenges for caregivers. For one, the positive situation of living longer has left some families unprepared. Heather Barnes with the Down Syndrome Association of Central Florida says families need to focus on plans for their loved one to outlive them. Barnes says finding memory care facilities that will take an adult with Down syndrome can be hard. So is finding doctors who aren't dismissive of their early signs of dementia. And then there's the cuts to federal funding. A congressional plan includes $880 billion in cuts that would fall heavily on Medicaid, the principal source of health care for Americans with Down syndrome.
But we don't know what services are going to be cut. Are entire groups of services going to be cut?
The uncertainty is creating a lot of anxiety. Barnes says adults with Down syndrome need specific research on how drugs used to treat Alzheimer's will affect them. For that, they rely on the National Institutes of Health, and cuts are planned there too. Back at the Tampa home, Marie Kalb says she marvels at the progress in skills and acceptance of kids today with Down syndrome.
I'm so glad to see that, but, I know in the back of my mind that Alzheimer's is coming.
Joe Burns, Central Florida Public Media.
That's it for The Wrap this week. This podcast is produced by Central Florida Public Media, with assistance from News Director LaToya Dennis and Digital Director Ryan Ellison. This week's episode was edited by Molly Durig. I'm Brendan Byrne. This is The Wrap.